Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here, and can I add my congratulations to all the award winners. It's always great to be in a room where excellence is around. As chairman of KPMG's global infrastructure business, I spend my life traveling around the world talking to people about infrastructure, and I think India is widely recognized as one of the most exciting markets in the world. Just before I came into the room, someone asked me, since I was at these awards last year, do you think people are more optimistic or less optimistic? Well, we've heard a little bit about that this evening. I think my answer is that I think in infrastructure everyone's always optimistic, but I would sense a higher level of frustration in the room than perhaps a year ago. So I would go for optimistic but a little bit more frustrated. Now, the important thing, I think, is that pretty much every country in the world, I think the sentiment would be the same. There is enormous frustration in actually getting infrastructure projects to the market for delivery. And it's not so much the doing the projects, it's preparing the projects that is the issue. So you're in very good company. What I'd like to do just briefly is continue this theme on urban development and cities. As we've heard, cities are the lifeblood of both the Indian economy but also any country's economy. And India's urban development is only going in one direction: increasing populations, the desire for improved public services, the drive to take people out of poverty, the need to improve communications within a city, to give people the ability to move around more effectively, to connect communities, to connect housing, schools, businesses, all in one seamless entity. And finally, the need to join up cities. I think there is increasingly a recognition that a city on its own doesn't really thrive. It's connecting cities, whether it be by high-speed railway lines, good roads, the DMIC corridor, or the dedicated freight corridor. And I think we are now recognizing that life is about economic corridors and not just about single cities. Now, these challenges, as I've said, are shared by pretty much any city in the world. But also we have some big issues on delivery. Finding the means to pay for this increased infrastructure. The fact is, governments are now very fiscally challenged. There is not enough money to go around to pay for this infrastructure. So I think inevitably there's going to be more pressure on cities to find their own means to pay, and inevitably, in my view, there will be more pressure put on the consumer, more user charges for the infrastructure that they use. We're going to need to see much more integrated planning of projects. City infrastructure is now a complex network of systems. It's interconnected, and therefore, given that the infrastructure is connected, our planning has to be much more joined up. We heard the Honourable Minister talk about the more efficient use of land, quicker consents, better holistic planning, better joined up planning. And also, I think a very important point in cities, particularly in India, but Asia as well, dealing with the informal part of society as well as the formal part of society. The fact is, if we don't deal in Asia with the 40% of people who currently live in slums, then we're not going to get the economic growth that we need. So I think the recurring theme that we see on the delivery side is the need for joined-up thinking. Another important issue here is dealing with the private sector. This transformation is never going to occur unless the public and the private sector work together. A growing number of private sector companies, developers, consultants are now forming new city businesses, setting up specialist city units, joining up their product offerings. Mr. Seth from Siemens have set up a cities business within Siemens, and KPMG also is no exception. Last year, we set up a Centre of Excellence for Cities, which brings together all our different products and services and all our global expertise into one group that can now offer an integrated offering into cities. But all these private sector businesses that are joining up their city practices are going to struggle unless they can find a clearer client on the public sector side. The fact is, it is very difficult for us as private sector businesses to find that city client. There's often a lack of governance, there's often a lack of leadership, there's often a lack of joined-up thinking between the different departments. So I suppose my plea for the Indian public sector, the Indian states, cities, is to make that client clear to the private sector so that the private sector can harness their skills and expertise to help these cities develop. And my last comment would be, and it's really dealing with this frustration point, is at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is deals being completed, infrastructure being built. You can talk forever about the planning, the thinking, but unless we turn this planning and thinking into actual deals, nothing is ever going to happen and no economic growth will ever occur. Thank you very much.